You're walking through the woods one afternoon. It's quiet. The trees are tall. The air smells like pine and wet earth. And then something stops you cold. A wild animal is standing just a few feet away, not running, not hiding, not snarling, looking at you, and then it moves closer. Most people would back away. Most people would assume the animal wants food, or that it's sick, or that something is deeply wrong. But what if the real reason is stranger than any of those answers? What if, in that moment, the animal isn't confused? It's making a decision, a calculated, almost eerily intelligent decision. To trust you. This happens more than scientists ever expected. Wild animals, not domesticated ones, not zoo animals, but truly wild creatures, have been documented approaching humans for help. Deliberately. Repeatedly. And the reasons why reveal something unsettling about the relationship between your species and every other one on this planet. Stay until the end. Because the last part doesn't just explain animal behavior, it reframes what you thought you were. Let's start with the most famous case. And it almost sounds made up. A wild humpback whale was spotted off the coast of San Francisco in 2005. She was tangled. Crab trap lines had wrapped around her body, around her tail, around her mouth, around a fin. She was exhausted. She could barely move. And at the rate she was going, she would drown. Divers entered the water. Now, think about that for a second. You are in open ocean. You are surrounded by a creature that weighs 60 tons. She could end you without even meaning to. One involuntary flinch. One tail movement. And it's over. The whale stayed still. Not just still. She positioned herself to make the diver's job easier. She moved her fins in ways that gave them access to the lines. When one section was cut, she shifted her body. Like she understood, like she was cooperating. It took over an hour. One of the divers later told reporters it was the most incredible experience of his life. When the last line was cut, the whale didn't bolt. She circled the boat. She swam up to each diver, one by one, and what she did next has been described as something between nuzzling and gratitude. The encounter was documented. The marine biologist James Mosquito was one of the divers. He said afterward that he didn't have the words for what it felt like. So what is actually happening in these moments? Because this wasn't a fluke. Cases like this have been recorded across dozens of species, and that pattern is what scientists have spent decades trying to explain. Let's go deeper. In 2016, in the forests of Rwanda, researchers observed something that stopped a whole team of primatologists cold. A mountain gorilla, a young wild male, approached a park ranger at the edge of a clearing. The gorilla had a deep wound on his arm, a snare wound. He sat. He extended the arm. He waited. The ranger carefully treated the wound. The gorilla let him, then walked back into the forest. This wasn't a gorilla that had been raised by humans. This wasn't a sanctuary animal. This was a wild gorilla who had apparently connected cause and effect. Humans sometimes help. This is something that needs help. Therefore, the cognitive leap required for that behavior is extraordinary. Because here's what most people get wrong. We assume that wild animals fear humans by default. And yes, most of them do. For good reason. Humans are the single most dangerous species on Earth from the perspective of virtually every other animal. We hunt, we destroy habitat, we are unpredictable. The default setting of most wild creatures when they encounter a human is to flee. Always. Immediately. So when an animal overrides that instinct, something significant has happened in its brain. Something has been weighed and decided. There is a concept in animal cognition research called cross-species trust calibration. It means the ability of one species to build a mental model of another species that is different enough from itself to be considered alien, and to make predictions about that alien species' behavior, and to decide, based on those predictions, that the alien species is worth approaching for a specific purpose. Dolphins have been documented doing this for centuries. Ancient sailors wrote about it. In Laguna, Brazil, wild bottlenose dolphins have been cooperating with local fishermen for over 150 years. Not trained dolphins. not captive dolphins, wild ones who made a choice. The dolphins herd fish toward the fishermen's nets. The fishermen, knowing the system, wait for the dolphin's signal, a specific roll of the body at the surface. Then they throw the nets. The fish that escape the nets go to the dolphins. It is a coordinated hunting strategy between two completely different species. Neither one invented it. It emerged. Generation after generation of dolphins teaching the next. Generation after generation of fishermen teaching the next. A tradition that belongs equally to both species. Researchers from the Federal University of Santa Catarina documented this in detail. The behavior has been passed down for so long that both the local human families and the local dolphin pods are multi-generational partners. The dolphins and fishermen who work together today are the descendants of the dolphins and fishermen who started this together over a century ago. Let that settle in. You have a lineage, a family history, a set of behaviors passed down to you through generations. So do they. And one of those behaviors is trust certain humans. But there is a harder question underneath all of this, and it's the one that the researchers keep circling back to. How do wild animals know who to ask? Because they don't approach everyone. That is one of the most documented and most consistently strange aspects of these encounters. Animals in distress will observe. They will watch multiple humans, and then they will select. They approach specific individuals, sometimes specific vehicles, sometimes specific uniforms. In multiple recorded cases involving wildlife rescues in India and across Southeast Asia, wild elephants approached wildlife rangers, specifically rangers, not nearby villagers, not tourists, not farmers, even when those other people were closer. The elephants seemed to understand at some level that certain humans had a specific role, that certain humans were associated with help. Researchers believe this is the product of observational learning. Elephants have been documented watching other elephants being treated by veterinary teams, watching from a distance, storing that information, and later using it. Elephants have one of the most sophisticated social memories of any animal on Earth. They remember individuals, they remember events, they grieve, they pass information across generations. And increasingly, researchers believe that part of what they pass along is a map of the human world. Which humans are safe? Which humans help? Which situations to avoid? Which situations to seek out? This is not instinct. This is knowledge, transmitted socially, like culture. And now here is where this gets personal. Because for hundreds of thousands of years before cities, before farms, before the world you were born into existed, your ancestors lived inside this system. They were not above it. They were in it. They were one animal among many, and they navigated the same kind of cross-species relationships that dolphins and elephants and gorillas are navigating right now. Ancient humans depended on interspecies information, birds that alarm called near predators, honey-guide birds in Africa that actively led humans to beehives and waited for them to share the honeycomb, wolves that co-evolved over thousands of years into something new entirely because the relationship worked for both sides. This was not some Golden Age myth. Researchers studying modern indigenous communities who still live in close contact with wild ecosystems document these relationships in real time. Certain communities have birdwatching systems, informal interspecies alliances that have been functioning for generations. The birds benefit. The humans benefit. Nobody signed a contract. The relationship just works. And then something changed. Not for the animals, for us. We built walls, we built cities, we put glass between ourselves and the weather. We forgot, not metaphorically but literally, forgot what it felt like to be one creature among many. The circuitry in your brain that was built for reading animal behavior, for tracking subtle signals in other species, for existing in a world of interspecies relationship and communication, that circuitry didn't disappear. It's still there. It just has nothing to do. Which might explain why, when someone posts a video of a wild animal approaching a human for help and getting that help, it spreads across the internet in hours. Millions of people stop scrolling. Millions of people feel something they struggle to name, something that goes deeper than cute, something closer to recognition, like a memory you didn't know you had, like something your nervous system remembers even though your mind forgot. When the humpback whale circled those divers after being freed, when the gorilla extended his wounded arm to the ranger, when the dolphins roll at the surface, giving their signal, and the fishermen throw their nets. Something true is happening. Something old. Wild animals approach humans for help because, over long stretches of time and observation and learning, some of them figured out that some of us can be trusted. The question they're really asking when they stop and look and choose to come closer is not whether you will help them, it's whether you remember what you are.